Every time, 30 seconds. Good evening. I would like to call the Government Services Committee meeting for Monday, April 22nd to order. Roll call, please.
Weber?
Yes, here.
Titus?
Here.
Pope? Baumgart?
Here.
Munn?
Here.
I'm here.
Again?
Here.
St.Charles?
Here.
Warlow?
Here. Here.
All right, thank you. Item 4, the omnibus.
So, make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Sorry. Moved by Besner, second by Wirball. Roll call, please.
Weber?
Yes.
Titus?
Yes.
Munn?
Yes.
Yep.
Again?
Yes. Yes.
Warlow?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you, that passes. Moving right along. Item 5A, IMEA Power Sales Contract Presentation. Peter, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Okay, so for the past 20 years, the City of St. Charles has received reliable, affordable, and sustainable electric power from the Illinois Municipal Electric Agency, otherwise known as IMEA. St. Charles has had a power sales contract with IMEA since 2004, which is set to expire in 2035, so a total of a 30-year contract. In order to plan for and ensure that the resources are in place to continue meeting our community's long and short-term goals and power needs, IMEA is requesting that St. Charles consider approving and executing a new power sales contract with IMEA from 2035 to 2055. Because of that request, 3 weeks ago, staff began a series of presentations and discussions with you, and we will also provide you with as much information continually as needed for you to make this important decision for our community. 3 weeks ago, we provided you with some background information about your St. Charles electric utility and the Illinois Municipal Electric Agency. We also discussed why the IMEA is asking for this decision now, almost 10 years left in our existing contract. And you provided us with some really good feedback, initial feedback, a lot of questions that really are helping us to produce this discussion tonight and future ones for later. So thank you very much for those comments, and keep them coming. This is what we need to do, is provide you the information to make this important. So tonight we're going to focus on the IMEA Sustainability Plan. But as always, and as willing, you feel free to ask us any questions about the contract that you like, or any of the topics associated with, and we'll try to answer those. Okay, so last year, the IMEA Board of Directors unanimously approved a new sustainability plan that at its core has a vision to reduce our power portfolio to have net zero carbon emissions delivered to its members, including St. Charles and the 31 other communities, by the year of 2050. So in other words, the 32 communities that are IMEA are committed to replacing our coal power supply with renewable and non-carbon emitting sources. This plan does not jeopardize the other core values to provide affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy. We plan to reach these goals by targeting reductions in greenhouse gases, by increasing our renewable generation sources, by allowing the flexibility needed to embrace changes in technology, by continuing to expand our energy efficiency programs, by reducing resource capacity needs and what we call demand response, which I'll describe in a little bit here, and by advancing electrical vehicle and EV infrastructure. So before moving on to the details of the IMEA Sustainability Plan, I'd like to just review some of the key provisions of the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, or the CEJA bill. IMEA prepared the sustainability with full understanding of the CEJA law and future requirements of the state of Illinois under this law. So CEJA was passed by the Illinois General Assembly and signed into law by Governor Pritzker on September 15, 2021. CEJA will affect every power provider in Illinois, not just IMEA. However, three of the major initiatives and directives of CEJA, which directly impact IMEA, are number one, to phase out carbon emissions from the energy and transportation sectors. Number two, promote and establish grant programs for electrical vehicles and charging stations. Number three, phase out fossil fuel-fired electrical generation units. Currently, IMEA is in compliance with CEJA, and I hope that you'll find that our sustainability plan matches the CEJA law, and we will be reducing our CO emissions between 20 and 35 and 20 and 38 by 45%, which is part of the CEJA bill. And between 2045 and 2050, we will be at net zero carbon emissions per this plan based on the CEJA bill as well. So going back to the actual IMEA sustainability plan, there are 5 sustainability principles that make up the IMEA sustainability plan. Number one, continue to provide affordable, reliable, and sustainable power supply. Number two, promote energy conservation. Number three, expand programs to our member communities to mitigate peak loads. Number four, accelerate the use of electric vehicles and charging infrastructure. And number five, maintain a sustainable workplace. So before taking a little deeper dive into each of those sustainability principles, it's important to note that IMEA has already accomplished a lot in regard to transitioning our energy portfolio. Currently, 11% of our current energy is coming from non-carbon emitting generating sources. This is compared to the Illinois State Renewable Portfolio Standard, which is only at 7 to 8% renewable. So we are leading the way in regards to renewable energy. IMEA has 9 solar arrays, one of which is here in St. Charles, and 8 other of our member communities. And we're actually under contract for next year to add 3 more. We have wind generation in the Lee DeKalb Wind Farm and Green River Wind Farm. And 2 of our municipalities actually have hydropower plants, Peru and Rock Fall. This is a good start for IMEA, and I mentioned this 3 weeks ago. However, there is no doubt that IMEA is currently heavily reliable on coal and realizes that renewable resources play an increasingly important role in supplying our customers with the reliable and sustainable power supply that we all depend on. Also, IMEA is well informed of the regulatory mandate that we just talked about through the CEJA law to transition our portfolio to more renewable energy. As a reminder, and additional information at your hands for tonight's discussion, IMEA owns about 12% of Trimble County generating station located in Kentucky, and IMEA owns about 15% of the Prairie State Generating Company. The IMEA stands behind the fact that Prairie State Generating Company is the cleanest coal-fired power plant in Illinois and one of the cleanest coal-fueled power plants in the world. Prairie State has invested $1 billion of the initial $4 billion total startup cost, so about a quarter of the cost, in equipment that significantly reduces the top 4 monitored air pollutants: 85% removal of nitrogen oxide, 98% removal of sulfur dioxide, 99% removal of particulate matter, and 90% removal of mercury. Prairie State meets and exceeds all requirements of the Environmental Protection Agency. So back to our sustainability plan. With that as a background, sustainability principle number 1 is to provide an affordable, reliable, and sustainable power supply to member communities. How are we going to do that? IMEA has already contracted to add 25 megawatts of solar with a Big River solar farm located in White County. That's going to come online next year. And IMEA will also pursue adding another 100 megawatts of solar to our portfolio between the time frame of 25 and 26. We're working on those agreements right now. In addition, as I mentioned, 3 of the other member communities are going to add solar to their communities, which will be part of our portfolio to add another 5 megawatts of solar to our portfolio in 2025. By the end of, in addition to solar, by the end of 2025, IMEA will study the feasibility of installing utility-scale behind-the-meter battery storage, which is a newer technology. If this is deemed economically feasible, which we think it will, and the technology is there, we will try to have that implemented in our communities by 2030, so in the next 5 years or so. And that's we'll go faster on that goal if we possibly can. So IMEA is committed to researching and exploring new and innovative technologies to reduce our current source of carbon footprint. This is perhaps a good opportunity to address one of the questions that we've received from you and I've received from other sources, and that's simply, can the sustainability plan, why can't the sustainability plan be in the contract itself? Why does it need to be a policy and not a complete, as a complete firm document in the contract? And to answer that question, I'll refer to something that you're familiar with, our city's strategic plan. Just like the strategic plan, this sustainability plan is meant to be reviewed regularly, and the progress is meant to be reported on regularly. This allows for periodic adjustments to assure continued affordability, reliability, and sustainability as technology and innovation advances and resources, quite frankly, become available that aren't available today. IMEA has committed to report on the progress of the sustainability plan. It's in our policy. Every year, we will review it at an open board meeting and update the plan every 3 years. This allows IMEA the flexibility to, number one, monitor technology advancements. That's really important today because technology, as we all know, is moving at the speed of light. And as those come on board, we want to take advantage of them if possible. Number two, we want to determine if this plan can actually be achieved faster than currently planned. And number three, continue to assure the affordability, reliability, and sustainable power that St. Charles has always known. In addition, there is a practical reason to keep this type of plan from being embedded in 32 separate contracts, meaning it would be very difficult and time-consuming to adjust the sustainability plan for any reason, positive or minus or negative, if each governing body, each 32 governing bodies needed to reconsider that entire contract for small changes in the sustainability plan. So that's the reason for the flexibility there and the reason to keep it actually out of the contract. So we've seen this slide 3 weeks ago. I didn't go into a whole lot of detail. This is the proposed and initial plan to transform and decarbonize the IMEA portfolio to the year 2050. A few things to point out as a plan. I won't go through every bullet point here, but IMEA began its renewable resources in 2009 with a wind project in Lee DeKalb. That's the first thing on the chart there in the upper left-hand corner. One thing that we talked about 3 weeks ago was why is IMEA asking its member communities to extend the contract now, more than 10 years from when this existing contract expires? Well, one of the main reasons for that that we discussed is that the longer-term contracts, 20-year contracts or more, are 20% to 30% lower in cost, which means more affordability to our residents and customers. The Lee DeKalb wind farm contract from 2009 is a perfect example of a long-term 20-year contract that has been very reliable, sustainable, affordable, and renewable. However, it is set to expire in 2030.
Pete, can I ask you a question
Yes,
real quick as
sure.
you're saying?
you said something, I want to make sure that I'm understanding clear, because you were talking about the length of our contract, and then you said contracts get cheaper, but you're not talking about our contract getting cheaper. You're talking about if we sign up, they can count on revenue so they can create their own contracts to provide cheaper energy, right? Because that didn't come across real clear.
Yeah, okay, so...
Do I have that right?
So, yeah, so Lee DeKalb wind project in 2009 has its own separate contract that IMEA has with the Lee DeKalb wind farm, and that is a 20-year contract. So a 20-year contract is more affordable than a 10-year contract.
So without knowing that they have customers, they can't go in contract with providers. Is that what you're saying? I want to make sure I get it.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So, quite frankly, IMEA desires, and our sustainability plan really requires us to replace those expiring resources with new renewable energy in 2030 with another long-term affordable contract, meaning that contract would go beyond 2035, just what you said. So, for example, in 2030, and I think it shows here on the chart on the bottom left-hand corner, 2030, it says replace expiring wind contract for the Lee DeKalb. So the 2009 contract comes up, and we want to replace that contract with another renewable source. And to get the affordability, we want to do it with a contract that is 20 years long. That would take you to 2050. So IMEA would not be able to sign that agreement for a new wind farm in 2030 without knowing what IMEA members are going to be around after 2035, up until 2050. So that's really the example, and it comes true as soon as 2030, and actually before that with some smaller projects. So going back to the chart here, a couple other things I wanted to point out. Note that in 2017, the St. Charles solar field came online with 0.5 megawatts. I already mentioned that IMEA would like to study the opportunity to get into the battery storage business. In 2025, we have plans to study that, and hopefully by 2030, we'll have our first online battery storage. And in line with the CEJA bill, there will be a 45% reduction of CO2 emissions at the Prairie State facility between 2035 and 2038. And the Trimble County coal units are set to retire in 2045 and 2050. So those resources, 45% of the resources in Prairie State, for example, that come off a line per the CEJA bill in 2035 to 2038, we need to start planning for those resources today. And the best deals out there are 20-year deals, 15 to 20-year deals to replace that source. And the goal, obviously, would be to replace those with renewable energy. That's what's captured in the sustainability plan. Okay, so sustainability principle number 2 is to design and facilitate energy conservation programs in support of the concept that the most sustainable watt of energy is the watt of energy that's not even generated. So what are our strategies to become more efficient in our own communities? IMEA offers many electrical efficiency programs that we'd like to continue and expand and promote more. Some that you may be familiar with that are already online and we have a grant program for smart thermostats and LED light bulbs. IMEA has given out over 100,000 LED light bulbs. Higher efficiency air conditioning units is another example of those programs that we can all get on board with. IMEA is also initiating a conservation voltage program, CVR in short. This is a very complex and technical initiative, so I'll leave the details to Paul and Gio to explain if you're interested. If you want to hang out for coffee afterwards, they could probably go into gory detail about this plan. But in essence, CVR is about lowering voltage on our distribution system intentionally to limit that allows for the safe operation of equipment and therefore the overall purchase of less power, especially during peak times. So we're modifying the system and reducing voltage on that system so that especially during peak times, we don't have to buy as much power. Sustainability principle number 3 is to offer flexible programs to mitigate peak loads, increase reliability, and better integrate clean energy potential. There's a lot of definitions for peak load, but I like to think of it in a real practical way. So for peak load, you could imagine that the city of St. Charles on a hot summer day at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when temperatures are the highest, people are getting back from home and school and work, and cranking up the air conditioners, they're watching TV and preparing dinner all at the same time. So this sustainability principle is all about helping our customers, residential and commercial, to reduce their power consumption during those peak loads. So, for example, IMEA already has a demand response program that incentivizes our commercial and industrial customers to reduce their consumption of power during peak load events. That can be expanded to residential customers with the help of smart meters and other technology advances. And I'll let you know that IMEA is close to receiving a federal grant to be used for these type of programs, which would in turn be available to St. Charles customers, residents, and commercial customers. Sustainability principle number 4 is to enable, accelerate, and integrate electrical vehicles and accompanying charging infrastructure. IMEA has recently increased the scope of funding for the EV charging station initiative to $750,000. That is available today, which our community can use to install EV charging stations for public use, purchase electrical vehicles for city use, and also incentivize retail customers to install EV charging stations. And IMEA is in support of the Illinois Department of Transportation's IDOT's National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program. Everybody likes these big acronyms. This is a program that we will continue to seek funding opportunities through the state of Illinois. Sustainability principle number 5 is to maintain and support a sustainable workplace. This sustainability principle is really all about leading by example, and IMEA does that. IMEA's headquarter building is in Springfield, Illinois, and it is a silver certified LEED building, leadership in environmental and environment design, energy and environment design. The facility is heated and cooled with a 100% geothermal heat pump system. It is equipped with motion and activated LED lighting systems. It has a 10 kilowatt solar array on its premises and several electric vehicles for staff and the charging infrastructure that accompanies that. IMEA has set the standard for St. Charles and other communities to follow as we feel fit. So in summary, through a unanimous vote of all 32-member communities, IMEA is committed to efforts to combat climate change and create a sustainable future while maintaining reliability and affordability. IMEA will do so by accelerating investments in renewable clean energy sources, offer demand reduction opportunities, advance EV infrastructure, and continue to explore new technologies, starting with battery storage next year. So we put this tentative, and again, the word tentative schedule up for you 3 weeks ago, just to identify that we had our initial meeting on this topic on April 1st as an introduction and received some initial feedback. Here we are tonight reviewing the sustainability plan. One topic that has come that was brought up 3 weeks ago and continues to be a question that we get are, what are other options that we have? If not IMEA, what is it? And I think we owe you that information, and I plan to bring that to you in May at the Government Services meeting. In June, I still have targeted the representatives from the IMEA organization to come and talk with you. And actually, that might be the first meeting where we see the actual contract itself and explain to you what that's about. And then, from that point forward, it's really, more information that we need to provide, beyond is fine. We would be glad to do so, and you'll help us, guide us as to what you'd like to see next. Just a reminder that April 30th, 2025 is the current IMEA deadline. I have to, strongly apologize. My slide last 3 weeks ago had an error on that date. It said May 31st, 2025, and I was wrong. That was my typo. So the April 30th, 2025 is the IMEA deadline, which, obviously is in about 12 or 13 months from now. So, before opening it up for questions, one more quick announcement. I just received my board packet for the IMEA board meeting, which is this coming Thursday, April 25th at 10 o'clock a.m. in Springfield, Illinois. Just like your committee and your city council meetings, this is, they're all, IMEA meetings are all public, and therefore you're welcome to attend online or in person. This Thursday, the IMEA Board of Directors will consider and vote on 10 separate resolutions accepting and approving new IMEA power sales contract capacity purchase agreements for the cities or villages of Princeton, Casey, Marshall, Altamont, Bushnell, Flora, Greenup, Roothouse, Rantoul, and Oglesby. So in other words, 10 of the 32 communities have already passed this contract through their city council and are going to be in front of IMEA this Thursday to get approved by IMEA to continue their contracts from 2035 to 2055. And with that, I will open it up to any questions, and of course my staff is here to help as well if needed.
Yeah.
I'll start you off with an easy one, Peter. So the current solar right now is a 0.5 megawatt, you said?
Yes.
And then the new one that's going to be added, do we know what that's going to be yet?
So there's 5 megawatts, so basically 10 of those in 3 other communities, and I can't remember what the distribution is for each one of those communities, but about 10 more of what we currently have in St. Charles is going online next year.
Okay.
I guess a quick question, Peter. So we have different timelines for contracts based on other cities. Is that just the way it's been set up? Meaning, you said these communities now, 10 or 15 of them are signing a contract now?
No, maybe another way to look at it is that it's kind of open season, and those 10 communities are ready to move forward with their contract today.
Okay.
St. Charles is not.
Gotcha. And then going back to your conversations about renewable sources, obviously we know some of what those might be, and there's still some future ones that we might not know what they are that are coming. But does that doesn't have anything to do with what you said is no matter what those renewable resources are, we still have a 20 or 30-year contract pending out there for better pricing. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. So each one of those renewable contracts, whether it's wind or solar or battery storage, each one of those deals will have its own contract.
Okay.
That IMEA contracts for us to supply power for a long-term deal.
Got it. Thank you.
And those will come online at different times as well. And again, going back to this chart, it kind of gives you a perspective of, not all of these things are done at the same time. So every so often, every few years, you're ending up with another resource that you build a contract. Next year, we'll have three more contracts for solar, for example. The following year, hopefully, we'll have a contract for battery storage.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So we'll be able to take a look at the contract in May, the next meeting, the actual contract itself?
I'm planning on the discussion in June.
Okay.
I have the contract. If you'd like to see it in advance, I'd be glad.
I'm just curious to take a look at it. And so just a couple questions. So you mentioned the sustainability plan is best not to be in the contract to provide the flexibility with new technologies and things of that nature. I'm just curious, if we're going to be net zero by 2050, correct? Why can't we put some sort of number or percentage, an incremental increase to get us to where we need to be without the specifics so it allows you that flexibility, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a commitment in writing in the contract, but it doesn't say, well, it has to be solar, or it has to be carbon capture, you know what I'm saying? Like, is that a possibility, or is that something you have to go back and inquire about, or?
I would have to check on that. I mean, at this point in time, I think that any change to the contract would be difficult. Certainly recognizing that 10 communities are going to be, have already passed that through their city council. That doesn't mean I can't ask, but I don't know how you can put something in the contract that's not, the contract typically, and the attorneys in the room can help me with this, but the contract typically is meant to be, you know, black and white. It kind of tells you what it is, and it doesn't usually reference, it might reference a sustainability plan or a strategic plan, but it's,
you know, for example, if it was, and I don't know, I'm just picking a number out of thin air, if it's 1 or 2% incremental increase of, let's say, renewable and non-carbon emitting resources. And then obviously there's a portfolio of items over the years to choose from, and I'm just wondering, with the CJA, you're going to have to comply with the mandate anyway, right? A certain percent. So why can't that number that gets you to where you need to be at the end be in the contract? I guess I'm just throwing it out there. I don't expect you to answer.
Yeah,
I
guess I turn that the other way and I say, well, if we set something in the contract that says, okay, the goal, it's just a goal, so it doesn't really mean anything contractually. But even if it was a goal to do 3% annually, to get to 45% reduction by 2035 to 2038. What if we wanted to go 6%, or we had the ability to go 8% or 10%? Is that against the contract then? I mean, so I think it works both ways. And that's why you typically don't want something like this in the contract. Okay.
And then I went on the IMEA's website. I was just reading they have a thing on their website just talking about the new contract, kind of like just a summary. And one of the paragraphs, it says, there is also a new offering in the contract whereby a member municipality can subscribe a percentage of its peak demand in Illinois-based renewable and carbon-free resources. This option is called member-directed resource and can begin as soon as a member extends the contract with the IMEA. What does that mean?
So, thank you. I would actually had a slide to tell you about member-directed resources, but I'm also trying to keep each one of these presentations limited to under 3 hours. But a great question, and I think it does belong with the sustainability question. So this is a new concept. We'll flash forward to 2 months from now, and when you see the contract and you compare the contract to our old contract, the contract is pretty much with some updates to legal language. The contract that we have proposed for 2035 to 2055 is almost identical to the contract that we've been living with for 20 years, because it's a good contract. It's worked. So that's really the discussion we had at the IMEA board, was why recreate the wheel if it's working in regards to contract language. The one new thing that is in the contract is exactly that, called member-directed resources. And that at its core allows for St.Charles or Ultima or any one of the municipalities to go a little bit faster than IMEA wants to go in regards to renewable energy. That has been something that the contract has not allowed us to do. It's kind of all for one, right? So 10% of our resources limit, total limit, we can increase. St. Charles can decide that for themselves to move forward with more sustainable practices quicker than IMEA does it. IMEA would negotiate all those contracts for us. They would do all the legal documents required for that. The only requirement back to St. Charles is that we would pay for it in full. And so you have an opportunity to with a member-directed resources, to go 10% more on renewable energy than other communities in IMEA.
And how would that take place? So would we come up, would it come here to council and we have a conversation and we vote on it? Is it?
I think it would, you know, good question. I think that it would probably be just like anything. If you, as council, were directing staff to kind of look into this and you felt like us as a community wanted to go faster than we are, you direct staff to do that, and I'd probably say, well, give me a few months, and then I'll be back and I'll present something to you with all the details on how we can get there.
And then the other thing that was on that page was about value-added services already built into the agency. So the IMEA member electric systems that own their own qualified, locally sourced generation units are also being offered an extension of their capacity purchase agreement. So how does that apply to us, St. Charles? Is that related to our solar farm that we have? Is there a connection with that at all?
I might have to take a pause on that.
That's okay.
Or get that question in writing to think it through. I don't have a direct answer unless anybody wants to take it.
The generation they're talking about is like the hydro that Peru and Rochelle have, or if a municipality owns the solar, that they could sell it that way. We don't generate anything in St. Charles, so that we have no generation facilities at all. The solar that's in St. Charles is owned by a private company, and it's connected through our electric back to IMEA's grid. So that really doesn't apply to us unless we want to start creating a generation system, whatever that may be. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I have one more question and I'm done. Basically, I asked it, I think, last time was things that are going to be done in southern Illinois or Kentucky, infrastructure-wise. Let's say they want to try out carbon capture. Who pays for it and how does it get paid for on something like that? Or it's a mini nuke thing they decide to do over a 10, 20-year period. How does that work? Like, would you come back to us, or is that something the IMEA would present to us, as we go through the sustainability?
Yeah, so I think that, it's really kind of a financial question. I think I reviewed some of the financial aspects of IMEA 3 weeks ago. They're in great financial situation. So I'd almost relate that to Tim Wilson's here, and he's got a water plant expansion that he needs to do 6 years from now. Do we know how Bill and Finance is going to finance that today? Do we even know the costs of that? Do we know the contracts related to that? Do we know how much inflation is going to cost 6 years from now? No. But we've got it budgeted, and we have some ideas. And as time gets closer, depending on our financial position in IMEA, they have the option to look at all things like bond, grants, pay for it directly out of reserves. All the decisions that you all make at budget season is the same way IMEA functions in Springfield. We have a board of directors just like you, and we sit down and our staff will present that, and they'll say, you know what, for this project it makes sense to bond it. And we've gotten these resources to do this particular project. Yay or nay? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it kind of, because I guess, for projects that are not an enormous cost, I get it, but if we're going to, there you have something here for Department of Energy U of I carbon capture research study under 2020, 2022. Yeah. And I'm just curious because there's some information that was provided that has some concerns as far as like cost and efficiencies and things of that nature. So my thing is, if we go down a path like that, that's an enormous undertaking. Is that something that's going to come back to this council? You know what I'm saying? Because we ultimately are going to be on the hook on it as a member of the IMEA long term, and I'm just
right now, as the board member for IMEA, I think if something that big came up, I would definitely be in front of you to get your feedback on that before having a vote at IMEA to push that forward. So definitely something that large we would be discussing about here. And again, that goes back to that local control. That's one thing that we haven't really done in the past, and I think that it's a great idea. We, as a Public Works Department, as the board member for IMEA, I should be in front of you every 6 months and giving you an update. And that just, for right or wrong, it's just been a practice that we really haven't done. Or some sort of report. Like I said, all of the IMEA board members are available to the public. You're more than welcome to go on and read all their minutes. You can join the meetings. You can visit in person. So, one thing that you're talking about is very large in scale. For example, if we were going to purchase an entire wind farm, I think that that's probably one of those things that we would talk about as a group. But you've mentioned it, and I know it's been a question that I have received as well about carbon capture, and I just want to read kind of the definition of carbon capture so that everybody has it. But carbon capture and sequestration storage, or CCS, is the process of capturing carbon dioxide, CO2, formed during power generation and industrial processes, and storing it so that it's not emitted into the atmosphere. I will admit that I am not an expert in carbon capture. We would have to get some of those very bright people from the University of Illinois to come here and present that to you if you really want to know about carbon capture, and there's a ton of information out there. But this is IMEA's position on that, and it's been talked about at our board meetings. It's been discussed at length. IMEA supports technology innovations. We're always going to support technology innovations. It's really necessary to shape the energy system of the future for decarbonization. So that's why we supported that plan. You see it right there in the plan there in 2020 to 2022. That's all it was supporting the U of I, who received a grant through the feds or the state or maybe both to do that work. So it didn't cost IMEA a cent for U of I to do that type of work. Why wouldn't we support technology and looking into these advancements? That doesn't mean that we're committed to doing that. But I will say that that study was completed in 2022. It was coupled with changes with the federal regulations, and a third-party developer could pursue a future carbon capture project, maybe at Prairie State, and that would make some sense. However, IMEA does not desire to pursue that on our own or be affiliated with that. It would be a third-party organization outside of IMEA that would work through that carbon capture. It really would be Prairie State Coal contracting with a third party to do carbon capture at their coal plant. IMEA, as a 15% owner in that company, probably would be, well, we keep an eye on that. We'd inform you. And if there were any costs that came back to IMEA for that type of technology, that would be a big decision that we would talk about.
Okay.
Thank
you. Yeah, thank you.
So you kind of did touch upon that. I was going to ask you, you mentioned that they spent about $1 billion at Prairie State to reduce particulates and et cetera. So you just mentioned carbon capture. Do you know, I mean, what was the percentage, like 93% is scrubbed out, or you gave some data earlier?
Yeah,
and it was very high, but I was just curious, is there any plans to make it, I know it's retiring in 2045, but does Trimble and Prairie State, I mean, are they going to go zero before they actually retire, or are they going to keep it, I think, at like 96% or whatever? If you know in your capacity as a board member.
For them, I can certainly ask them of that. My assumption is that if they can reduce those because technology becomes available and there's some things that they can continue to do to improve their plant, then they would.
So, okay, so they are, again, based on your, the 5 pillars of advancement, if they will adopt that, they're committed to doing that and getting up to 100%. Hopefully before it retires, obviously.
Yeah, and I don't, again, I don't know that much about the technology specifically that eliminates those or reduces those, so I don't want to stand here and say that, Prairie State is doing that. I'm just assuming that if there's technology there that's affordable and they can get some of these particulates, for example, down to another percentage or 2, then they're going to look at that.
Do you, no, I appreciate that. And then do you also, again, as a board member in your discussions with IMEA, I mean, expansion of these EE or energy efficiency programs, that's a possibility, but can you speak to how great of a possibility that might be? A specific, could that be baked into this plan more in some capacity, you know, like rebates, and I know you mentioned there's like air-conditioned rebates, but just expanding that, is that been talked about, or?
It's very possible, and and quite frankly, a lot of these programs are already in place. I think the idea is to expand on them, to promote them more. Again, I'm receiving guidance from you as well, so, if you say, hey, staff, we need to become more renewable, we need to provide more EV charging stations in our community, we need to do some of these things, and we're all ears, and we have the availability and the increased availability from IMEA to do some of these things, as is really a grant opportunity through them.
And just a couple more. So this MDR, member-directed resource, I guess that's connected to EE actually, but pivoting to, you know, recently the state passed a law that allows for what they call micro nukes, or, you know, the smaller reactors. Is that something that IMEA has discussed? I mean, I know it's a newer law, but like as a potential cleaner source. I know it might take a little while to get those up and running through the federal government and what have you, but I don't, you know.
That's a perfect example of technology that might not be ready today, that will be maybe someday in the future, 3, 5, 10 years, I don't know. It would be really difficult to put that in writing because it's just not advanced yet. But IMEA will look at anything that is affordable, reliable, and sustainable. And that certainly will be one. We'll be watching that as those small nuclears come on board. If they do.
Right, if they do.
If they do.
Well, thank you, Peter, for everything. So mine are probably more in the financial area, and having dealt with demand response and being ready to do that, I just never knew a community could do that. When we were part of PJM, so when they would say, pardon me, you need to shut down because of a demand day, does the municipality able to do that with their residents, saying, could you voluntarily cycle down your air conditioner? Is that part of what the demand response that was mentioned in your presentation?
That's exactly it. And on the residential scale, it's a little bit more difficult because right now we have it on the commercial side and industrial, and we've actually talked to a lot of our large industrial folks who have had some interest in actually doing it. That is more of a communication where IMEA, who monitors the system 24/7, 365 down in Springfield, can actually call the plant manager of a industry in St. Charles and say, we'd like you to reduce power. And if they're able to do it, they don't, not guaranteed that they need to, but if they can adjust power for that duration, then there is a benefit financially for that business. On the residential side, again, my folks can correct me if I'm wrong, it would be difficult to have a call center and do that manually by voice and with residential, but that's where smart meters and advanced technology comes into play. And IMEA is, as I mentioned, is close to receiving a federal and state grant to pay for some of those infrastructure projects. Those are the type of things that are baked into that sustainability initiative in this plan.
And I know you have a plan for our May session about that, about options and others, but just, I don't know the answer, but I know we're a 15% partner in the IMEA based on our size. So how many megawatts do we purchase on an annual basis when we start looking at other options on? So if we have
peak to 130 annual.
130 megawatts annual?
Yeah, historical.
Pardon? Historic, okay.
1 year.
Up or down, yeah, but it's not going to vary enough where it'll, because I look at options for wind and solar, and if we were to somewhere down the road entertain to replace Prairie State and Trumbull counties with renewable sources, how do we manage that to get those 15, 20-year contracts in place to say, okay, we now need 130 megawatt hours just for our municipality? How do we service Naperville and the other 30 of those that are doing that? That's just, it's a question for down the road, but how do we manage that?
It's a tough question, and I'm just going to give a little prop here to, I know it's coming with the options, right? I'm glad that we have IMEA in our corner in that regard to help us figure those contracts, those long-term decisions out. Because if we had to do that alone in St. Charles, I'm gonna need some help.
Yeah. Well, and as our community
Yeah.
continues to grow, both
Yeah.
residential users and our commercial and industrial base, that 130 today in megawatts may be 150 or 175, 20 years down the road. How
That's
do we
right.
meet that demand? And that's just us.
That's right.
So it's just something to think about
Yep.
for the future one. So thank you again, Peter, for all your hard work on this.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
I'll let you guys go first. Come on.
I don't know, you know what, as I'm considering, continue to learn more and hear more about this consideration, I think it's great that we're hearing this. I still get the point, and I want to make sure that we understand, like, IMEA, you sit on the board, and, with the amount of authority that we have, I mean, this is pretty much just St. Charles. But I'm still curious, as we talk about this, how to frame this consideration. But I know that there's more to come. I think you did a great job presenting everything that you presented today. So I'm still listening as things come up, and I don't want to get ahead of any questions. So I appreciate all the information.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. If you could go to slide 8 for me, please. I don't quite understand what utility scale solar and meter solar projects are in those 2 bullets there. Can you help me understand what those are?
So, you guys want to tackle this? In my mind, utility scale solar is not a residential solar panel on someone's home. It's a larger scale solar plant or facility, and meant for utility size applications. Okay?
Okay.
Well, good guess.
And then a meter solar project would be?
They're like residential, okay, so that they're serving the building that they're on.
Okay.
That's all they're serving.
Okay.
They make some excess. Whereas utility is all produced to be distributed to the local utility, or if they sell or whatever. That's really the difference. Behind the meter are all individual private type installations, like the houses in St.Charles. Those are all behind the meter.
Okay. I guess I don't understand how IMEA is adding those if those are done by private residents. So maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying there.
Those are not going to be done by private residents. Have you seen our solar plant? Yeah, they are embedded in our member communities.
Okay.
On City of St. Charles property or Rantoul's property or Naperville's property, and they're owned by a third party contractor or supplier, and IMEA contracts that for a 20-year period of time or 30-year period of time. So those those 5 megawatts behind the meter solar projects are going to be very similar to the solar operation that we have here in St. Charles, in just a different community.
Okay, that helps. Thank you. And then I guess I'm curious, you talk a lot in your presentations about customers for our utility, for electricity, and you talk about those as residents, but I'm curious what the experiences are from our businesses or our developers when they are trying to manage their way through the process of, let's say, building a new facility and trying to get all of their utility put together with that. And is that something that they experience the same experience with if they were outside of IMEA, or is it different? Is it more difficult, less difficult?
So one of the reasons that I wanted to talk a little bit 3 weeks ago about our St. Charles electric utility, and that's the staff that we have internal, the line folks that work, the engineers that are in our office, the infrastructure in St. Charles that we manage. When there's a new developer that does work and needs to have infrastructure put in for that new building, for example, that's all the responsibility of the utility. What we're talking about here is actually where the power comes from. And so that customer, at least initially during the development phase of a project, It's really not, it's nothing that they're usually concerned about.
Okay.
So it's the utility work that we do to get them online. The power sources and resources for that development has already been established through IMEA. It's already there, ready to go.
So they would have the same experience in St. Charles as a developer as they would if they were in a municipality that used, for example, ComEd or another power provider?
I think it's a different experience. They, in my opinion, have an experience where they have a face and a name to those that they're working with. They come to our office, for example, and meet with us. In the ComEd world, that doesn't necessarily happen. They go through an application process, but it's not as one-on-one and helpful, in my opinion. So I think they have a better experience in St. Charles in regards to developers that are getting infrastructure work done for their projects.
Okay. And then I'm curious, because we talked for a second about home solar installations, and they do know a couple residents that have solar, and they had mentioned to me, and maybe I don't fully understand it, but that they don't receive any benefit from the utility back for having solar where they would if they were in a different grid than IMEA.
Yes, so,
Is that accurate?
so they do receive,
8 cents. 8 cents a kilowatt hour. Okay.
8 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah, sure. Because I definitely don't understand it.
Well, first of all, St. Charles has had credits for solar since 2015 was the first one when I was actually a commercial account in St. Charles. So historically, until the CEJA Act passed, St. Charles always figured that we would credit back what the previous year's cost of electricity was for us, our average cost for the year. That's how we credit it back. The CEJA Act changed that, and they have a very prescriptive rule that you have to make the calculations on, okay? And it has to do with deferred costs for no transmission, all kinds of things. So the first year that CEJA went in, which was 2022 for us, our previous year average cost was, I think it was like 8.2 cents, 8.3 cents. And the CEJA was 6 point something, okay? And so we scripted our law here that anybody that had a solar installation before the CEJA Act took effect for us would either get 10 years worth of the way we calculate it or the CEJA amount, whichever was higher on an annual basis. And that's how we've operated. So last year, 2023, as Mr. Cochran was hollering out, I think that the amount was, I think it was 8.6, 8.3, whatever it was. It was slightly more than what our annual previous was. So everybody got the CEJA rate, both the previous customers and the new customers. This year, and this is due to transmission costs and things that are going on across the nation, the CEJA rate for St. Charles is 4.14 cents or 4.16 cents. So the people that were in before CEJA Act, they will get what our year's average was, which is 7.932. So that's just what we could do to set our codes up, right, to be fair for people that already had it in there. But otherwise, we have to follow the CEJA Act. And so next year it'll be different again, whatever that amounts to. Does
that does make sense, yeah. Okay.
The one other thing that I'd like to add to that, too, is that is a local decision, a St. Charles decision. We can set that rate. It has nothing really to do with IMEA. They help us manage that. They are there as our professionals to do the calculations and get research from them. But at the end of the day, St. Charles can make that decision for St. Charles.
That's good to know. You also mentioned that there was that $750,000 funding initiative. Is that $750,000 for all of the 32 members, or is that per municipality?
It is for all 32 on an annual basis.
Okay.
So we can tap into that, and quite frankly, those dollars are available. And, if that was spent, IMEA would consider increasing that.
Oh, okay. And I just have one more. With the member-directed resources that Alderman Woolball had mentioned, so if we wanted to bake that into our contract or include that in our renewal, that we wanted to accelerate our utilization of renewable energy, or, you know, to get up to that 10% threshold? Is that something that we could decide to do during our renewal process?
It is already baked into the new contract, so it's already there.
No, I mean, if we wanted to do, like, actually pursue that acceleration beyond what IMEA is doing.
That's correct. We would, I think that in all fairness, IMEA probably won't, really activate that until next year at this time, when all the contracts are signed. And then there'll probably be some board discussions on how to actually implement that. But very soon, that will be available to us.
So that would work where we sign the contract and then we as a body direct you to pursue those additional renewables up to that 10%.
Correct.
Okay. Fantastic. That's everything. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I do appreciate that. It's very informative. I do have, most of my questions have been asked already here. But I do think this is going to affect people down the road a lot. Mostly manufacturing companies, they need constant electricity. But we also have an opportunity to potentially, which you will discuss at next month's meeting, other options. That is what I'm really interested in. What other options do we have? And you will present that next Monday. So I'm very interested in that. You said that does St. Charles own 15% of the plant, or does the IMEA own 15%?
IMEA.
Okay, so we own a fraction at the city of St. Charles. I don't
actually have that percentage somewhere, but I have to look it up.
If it's 15% for 40-odd people, you said, so it's a fraction. Let's just say we opt out of the contract. Would we get reimbursed for our 0.5%, whatever the number is for either plant? Do you know how that works? I know it's probably never been done.
Just a little play on words there. We wouldn't opt out of a contract. We are
for 10 years.
Yeah, we are in our existing contract until 2035. When that one expires, if we take no action on this, then we wouldn't opt into the new contract that starts into 2035 to 2055.
Correct.
And so I think the question you have is that if that happened in 2035, we are no longer an IMEA member, would there be a reimbursement back to us for anything? I think the answer to that is probably no.
No? Okay. Thank you. Boy. Yeah, that's all I have now, but do we have an opportunity now to make a big decision? Oh, one more comment. Now, I know we have the dates here that have been set in Springfield. Okay, we know how Springfield works. I mean, Southern Illinois has a very large, there's a lot of coal mines down in Southern Illinois. So I'm not convinced that the lobby is not going to try to push that date out farther. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
For the 32 member communities, is there a specific financial incentive for entering into these negotiations early? So IMEA is coming in and saying, hey, we want to get a jump on this because it helps us do all these things down the line, which in turn makes us, you know, affordable, reliable, all of that. But is there anything for the 32 member communities that ultimately make up IMEA that is, and to encourage you to do so, like helping keep costs down, lowers, or anything that's black and white tangible other than here's why we need to do this because it helps us plan better?
Yes and no. So I'll try to take a stab at this, and I'm not sure exactly if I'm answering it correctly, but there are a couple of things that I could say will happen after 2035 if we continue to become a member. First off, a lot of the bond debt service on the Prairie State facility will be paid off about that time. I don't know if it's 2035 or it carries into 2036, but about that time. I always liken it to your home mortgage, right? So when your home mortgage is up after paying it for 30 years, you own the home and you don't have to pay that mortgage. So There's been some figures out there that say that our rates and all the municipal rates at that point in time will drop 25%. I don't take a whole lot of stock in that, because we also know that if you have a 30-year-old home, you have to put some maintenance into it. Right. So, but there will be some percentage of reduction in all of our municipal rates, the 32 communities, after 2035, because of that huge debt service that comes off. Now, somewhere between 5 and 25% is probably safe to say. So that's one thing. I think that there are also going to be, there's contracts that we currently have with Prairie State and with the coal plants that go beyond 2035. Those are locked in today. Those are long-term contracts that, in my opinion, and all the research in 15 years of being in this business, I don't think that we're going to find more affordable rates and reliable rates than the things that we're locked into that go beyond 2035 by just being a member today. And we're also going to be making, in my opinion, smart decisions. IMEA will be making smart decisions in the next 10 years that will be afforded those communities after 2035 the benefits of those smart decisions in the next 10 years. So I know that didn't answer your question specifically, but again, I think the path forward financially with IMEA is as secure, if not more, than any other option that I know of.
Why don't the 32 member communities who ultimately make up IMEA go and say, listen, we can't control distribution, and when you go back to the last presentation, that's been where the biggest flux has been of cost. But as a way to continue the sustainability and make that investment, as a way to offset those costs, ultimately the 32 communities led by Naperville, St. Charles, you know, we're the big dogs that are coming in. Why not find a way to say, hey, we want to make sure that this is a plan for the next 25, 30, 40, 50 years. Is there any way to encourage a body like this to look at this early? We can find out, even if it's 0.5% or X. That's the part in this whole conversation as we've gotten into this that seems like there hasn't been a black and white incentive for a community to say, hey, we want you to enter into this early, other than it's the same deal, which is a pretty good deal. But traditionally, when somebody asks you to do something earlier than you're contractually obligated, there's a reason why that benefits this side of the aisle.
It's really that long-term contract. That has been, I've said this to some of you already, I think that's been one of the secret sauces in IMEA's success over the years, is long-term contracts that are affordable. And that's the heart of it, really, is getting, replacing our generation sources with contracts that are coming up in the next 10 years, and also preparing for that reduction in coal to more renewable energy with long-term contracts. So if IMEA didn't know that they had members after 2035, the best that they can do is go shop out contracts less than 10 years. That's it. That's the incentive.
Yeah, that's a quick one. Where is Naperville right now with their consulting project? Are they moving along quite well? Or?
Yeah, so I did chat with my counterpart over there, and they are running a little slower than what I anticipated or knew from previous discussions with them. It's my understanding that this month they're just now getting a consultant on board.
Okay.
And then it'll probably be a good 3 months before they actually have some data that they'll publish. So I'm still thinking it's 3 to 4 months out before they have something substantial.
Is that something that we can take a look at once they're done? Is that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And I think from what I understand of their study, I don't know it intimately because, you know, they're doing it, but I think it will apply to us as well. Maybe not, you know, dot for dot, but we're very similar to Naperville in that regard. They're looking at the same things. They're part of the same organization. They're 3 times the size of us, but I think we will probably get a lot of information from the results of their report that we can translate into how that would apply to St. Charles.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Item 5B, recommendation to approve a resolution authorizing a 42-month service agreement with OpenGov, Inc. for Public Works Work Order Asset Management Software. Good evening, Chris.
Yes, good evening. I promise I will not take as long as Pete did this evening, but although I want to thank him for all his hard work on that and very informative presentation. So while I'm thanking people, I'd like to thank the committee tonight for hearing this. I'm really excited to be able to present this to you all tonight. This item is, from what I understand, I haven't been here 28 years, but 28 years in the making. It's certainly 12 years in the making for me and over 15 years in the making for Peter. So right now, the Public Works Department utilizes many manual processes and in-house software solutions such as Excel spreadsheets, Access databases, things like that, to manage our workload, everything from service requests to assigning work to our crews, etc. So in August, we set out to issue a request for information from several vendors to provide a out-of-the-box solution for software system for work order and asset management from the Public Works Department. We had a very good response to that, and we limited the responses down to 3 companies that we felt would benefit us from seeing product demos. We brought all those folks in and saw product demos for 3 people and essentially narrowed it down to 1, OpenGov, also known as Cartograph. And I want to just take a few minutes to explain the OpenGov/Cartograph, as some of you may be familiar with the Cartograph product. Cartograph product is was recently purchased by OpenGov, but they're a company out of Dubuque, Iowa originally, and I think personally they're probably the market leader in the asset management work order arena. They were recently purchased by OpenGov, which expands their capabilities and their financial backing to provide more technology to us down the road. And so we're really excited to partner with them. The item that you have before you this evening is a 42-month subscription. It includes all of our professional services for implementation for OpenGov, and it includes 4 years of a service agreement for each one of those. What I'm asking for this evening is approval for the first-year contract, and then approval for the remaining 3 years, contingent upon the approval of the fiscal budget and those corresponding years. So similar to what we've done other multi-year contracts before, we're actually getting the first year approved, which is in next fiscal year's budget, and we're asking to have that service agreement amount approved in advance, but contingent upon its inclusion in the corresponding fiscal year budget of the future years. So I'll pause there for a moment and see if anybody has any questions on that, because it is a large sum of money.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm just looking at the numbers for, in November, we'll have to approve, like, 3 times as much as we're paying now? Goes from 74 to 200. Is that because we're like a half a year is what we're dealing with?
Yeah, so what we're doing, the first line you see in May 1 is $144,000. Right. $523.33. So that'll be our initial purchase order to the vendor, and it includes $74,000 in annual fees, and the one-time fee, which is the professional services fee, is the fee that allows is for them to come in and help us with implementation and so forth. So we're asking for that tonight, and then the corresponding amount to be approved with the additional budget.
It seems like a lot of $117,000 for professional services.
It's actually $70,000 for professional services and $74,000 for the subscription. Okay. The annual subscription per year is around about $200,000 per year for a whole year.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So there's no other questions about that?
Hang on, Chris, I got one.
Sure.
You know what, in looking at this, because I heard we've been working on it, but could you make sure that I understand, and I'm really clear on the business case for putting this in, because help me understand what this is doing for us, because you know, how these costs are working to remove other costs, and this is making us more efficient. I wouldn't mind getting a little deeper in the business case.
Great questions.
Thank you.
I'm going to use a few examples that I've heard from many of you.
Right.
So we field questions all the time from folks like, how many water main breaks have you had this year? How many calls did you get about leaf pickup this year? How many questions did you have about trash pickup this year? In order for us to recall just those 3 simple questions, we have to summarize the data on our Access database call log, review all staff emails on those subjects, and then also review the city's rock solid or city-sourced web-based service request platform to compile all that data. So what this will do, it will take all the information from any sources that are remaining, like the rock solid / city source interface on the website. It will allow us to eliminate all the manual processes and emails and things and automate those and track all of that work assigned, the cost associated with the work assigned, and it will also track all the calls for service requests regardless of what it is.
Okay.
Does that help?
It definitely does, but if I was gonna go and go back, so is this replacing systems? Is it decreasing man hours? Or is this, you know, purely augmentation and better aiming of services? Because I would expect that it's gonna decrease hours, which is gonna decrease labor costs.
Some of the above, that's correct. Right.
We don't have any kind of a detail on a business case like that, like projections on it?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Projections on cost savings or anything like that with business case?
I have not projected cost savings on a business.
But you expect that?
I think that it's to be expected a increase in productivity, a decrease in staff time to compile not only service request inquiries, but also a decrease in the amount of time it takes to formulate our crews and plan our work. So right now, as we plan work for the week, that's a complete manual process. If anybody's been through the Public Works Department, you'll see a lot of whiteboards with magic marker on them. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, this is what we're going to have people doing. And then, you know, someone calls in sick, we have to shuffle it all. And we do that all by hand.
Sure.
So this process will automate that.
Okay, and I think that that's awesome. I want to give you a point of view to go along with this, and this is broader scope for all of the city. You know, as we're taking a look at rising costs and everything, I love that we're investing money because it sounds like we're going to be more effective and it'll allow us to do more, which is great. I'm in a spot where I'm also looking for places where I'm not looking to do more, I'm looking for our services to cost less as well. I'm glad that we're able to do more, and this might not be a spot where we're looking to cut and save, and I'm just trying to wrap my brain around that.
Sure.
You know, but I am glad that this is going to make us more effective. Is that fair? Do you get where I'm coming from?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to cut you off. Is there a predictive or forecasting component with this tool? So kind of to Paul's point, so you're pulling in all this data, right? It makes the ability to recall information, but is there another component that pulls all that in and then gives a projection or a forecast? Some sort of like, here's how many water main breaks you might expect in the next 6 months, or...
Yes, wonderful question, very intuitive on what we have just had, the dialogue we had. So this software will allow us, as data is compiled over time, it will allow us to provide, it will yield us data to provide more detailed budgets, more detailed information on how long it will take us to do things, how much it costs us to maintenance things. So as an example, if we pull, we've recently pulled one of the wells out in the parking lot, we can track all of that information, and over time, as all that data, all the cost data, all the time data is included in that, it will be able to compile all that information and then spit out what we've done and what we've spent, and then anticipate what those costs based on labor hours and material costs will be in the future, correct?
A lot of great questions up here. I just looking for some clarity on the memo. It says approval of the commitment in the out years will be based upon the corresponding fiscal year budget. The city has the option to discontinue service if funds are not approved in the budget with no penalty. I mean, I'm fine with this, what you want to do, but it would be nice if you can come back maybe after the first year and just kind of tell us how it's working out and how, you know, a lot of the good questions up here. So is that something you're willing to do?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, we're always happy to share information, and we love to talk about public works. So any opportunity we can get to come up here and talk about public works and the things we've done, I'd be thrilled to do that.
Yeah, just to see how well this software is working out, the data collection that you're talking about would be great. So.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That would be wonderful.
Mr. Weber.
Thank you, Chairman Bongard. Yeah, I mean, I'm in total support of this. I mean, I like, you know, this is something that they use in private sector to track the cost of every job. I'm assuming everything will have a job number, all the parts, all the labor, everything that's done, it all sticks together with that. with that job, and you can really kind of get down to seeing where some of those savings could be. This will provide you with the tools to make better decisions on projects and stuff like that, correct?
That's correct. Currently, we don't have the ability to track many of the materials costs and things like that. That's all a manual process, and this will give us exactly that ability.
No, that's great. I'm excited because you're excited. I don't see a lot of emotions about it very often. So if you're excited, it makes me feel good about this, so I'm definitely in support of it.
Go on, David.
Again, I'm supportive of it as well, but how long will this fee for the consultant to come and help integrate it? So it's 42-month service agreement, but I assume that'll be all taken.
Yeah.
When will that be done?
It's a large implementation project, as you can imagine. We're implementing across all 5 public works divisions, and we've broken that up into 2 phases. And currently, we have broken out the electric component of that for a future 3rd phase. So to answer your question directly, we're planning on a 2 fiscal year implementation. That's why you see professional services in the one-time fees column in your packet. Those are the 2 phases for OpenGov to come in and help us with the implementation. We're going to start with public services, AJ's group, and inventory and streets and engineering. And then we're going to move to Tim's group in phase 2 and start with wastewater, water, and the lab.
Thanks.
Sure.
Just so I'm clear, Chris, great job, so thank you. I appreciate you going forward, having it all in one place. But with the dates that you have on your chart there, so we have a May 1st payment and a December 1st payment in '24? So those would both be in the current fiscal year. So has the full roughly $450,000 been budgeted?
Yes.
It has been, okay.
Yes.
So we're just doing the first part to get it started.
Correct.
Then we'll have another when we get to phase.
If that's what you would desire, we'd be happy to do that. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So those
But they're all in the budget, the current fiscal. It's overlapping 2 fiscal years a bit, so they're both in both.
Okay, yeah, just to make sure that as we look at that they're budgeted in the future fiscal years as you need it. But
Yes.
just to make sure both payments in 2024 are covered in the current.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I would just like a commitment, because I actually love that you're getting more transparency and data, and I would like you, as we learn what we're doing, what we're spending our time on and money in, to use this to deliver cost savings in the future. Make that commitment to me. I'm an A+, yes.
I'll do everything I can to make that commitment.
I'll take that, I'll take that.
There you go.
Move for
So
approval.
one other item
Sorry.
before anyone makes a motion, I did want to cover, because of this, the subscription and the procurement that we did, you'll notice there's a bid waiver form in your packet. So it's more of a formality. It was a professional services solicitation. I just wanted to make note of that, and so that you're all aware. So.
I had one question really quickly.
Go ahead, Jake.
Just one very quick question. Do I understand correctly, you mentioned CitySource, the user interface for residents, does this provide a replacement for that?
This won't replace CitySource, but what it will do is it will absorb the information from CitySource and process it automatically, so we're not having to manually process. So currently, when something comes in from CitySource, we get an email that says you have an issue in CitySource, and then we actually put that into our Access database, in-house built work management system. This will automate that process.
Okay. And I know that we had an app that worked with CitySource, but I guess it doesn't necessarily work anymore. It works through the website. Is there something that works with that?
You know, that's not something that we work on in Public Works, the out-facing part of CitySource, but I know that OpenGov does provide an out-facing, what would be considered a CIS, but it's not part of this agreement. So there are options to, use this in other capacities, but that's not part of it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so moved by David, second by Paul. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 All right, Dave, that passes. Item 5C, a recommendation to approve a resolution awarding the bid for the Indiana Street Storm and Sanitary Sewer Line Project.
So this project that combines sanitary sewer and storm water improvement along Indiana Street between South 17th and South 13th Street. It's actually the 3rd phase of improvements in the area for some of the council members that have been around for a while. The first phase was part of the police station construction. did a lot of storm and water and sanitary improvements. The second phase was 2 years ago, when we did the Walnut and water and stormwater improvements. And this is the third phase. There's be additional phases in the future. The intent is to help when we have rainy weather. There's a lot of flooding and sanitary sewer and street flooding in the area. This is to help improve those issues. J&S was the low bidder on this project. They have successfully completed several projects for us in the past. Actually had a conversation this week. They're looking to start fairly quickly, hopefully around May or early June. So this project will be moving forward through the summer. We'll hopefully wrap it up before the kids are ready to go back to school, if not shortly thereafter. Any questions? Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Paul, second by Brian. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you, that passes. Moving on to item 6, public comment. Any, then any other items from council or the mayor? Oh, sorry. No problem. Just state your name, please.
My name's Richard Cochran. I'm a member of the Tri-Cities Clean Energy Committee. I'm kind of reiterating the dirty coal part of this IMEA thing. It's unfortunate that St. Charles is currently locked into a contract that uses 80% coal-powered electricity and has limited clean energy options. It's no secret that coal has the worst environmental impact of any power source, and here is a summary of why coal is a poor choice for today and in the future. Coal-generated electricity by far releases the most carbon into the atmosphere, more than two times that of natural gas per unit of electricity generated. Of all fossil fuel sources, coal should be the first to be eliminated to help save our planet. The Prairie State coal-fired plant emits nearly 13 million tons of CO2 per year and is the largest polluter in Illinois. Coal combustion emits sulfur dioxide, nitric oxides, particulate matter, and mercury into the atmosphere. These pollutants cause respiratory and cardiovascular diseases and contribute to acid rain, damaging forests, crops, and water bodies. There are some false claims that the Prairie State coal plant is one of the cleanest coal-fired power plants in the nation. To be honest, the Prairie State coal plant is the top emitter of planet-warming greenhouse gases in Illinois and one of the 10 largest in the U.S. Additionally, Prairie State emits more toxic sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides than any other source in Illinois. These toxic pollutants and others generated at the power plant contributed to the cause of 76 premature deaths per year. St. Clair County, Illinois, has been recently designated as a non-attainment county under the Clean Air Act. This means that St. Clair County has unacceptable levels of particulate matter, soot in its air, caused by its proximity to Prairie State Energy Campus. Additionally, coal-powered plants generate large quantities of coal ash, a toxic byproduct that contains heavy metals like arsenic, lead, and mercury. Disposal of coal ash is an environmental challenge and ongoing liability long after its creation. Those touting the claims of clean coal often conveniently forget about the coal ash and the entire dirty mining process of coal. Prairie State dumps its coal ash in a massive 750-acre coal ash landfill known as the Nearfield facility. The scale is truly massive. 750 acres is larger than a square mile. The amount of coal ash created at this power plant each year, roughly 2.3 million cubic yards, is comparable to the amount created at other plants over their entire lifespans. According to Pew Research Center, the majority of Americans support prioritizing the development of renewable energy sources. 2/3 of U.S. adults say the country should prioritize developing renewable energy sources such as wind, solar, and nuclear over expanding the production of oil, coal, and natural gas. According to a survey conducted in June 2023, the global consensus is for rapid retirement of coal-generated power, transitioning to cleaner and more sustainable sources of energy. This should be St. Charles's direction as well as we consider other options beyond our IMEA contract extension. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
State your name, please.
Sure, I'm Jeff Motter.
Thank you, Jeff.
It's M-A-D-E-R. Just as a sidebar, as I was preparing some notes, I found it ironic that we're discussing the sustainability plan today on Earth Day 2024. So, if no one else gets a smile, I did. The Oxford Dictionary describes sustainability in two ways. The ability to be maintained at a certain rate or level, maintaining the status quo, and the avoidance of the depletion of natural resources in order to maintain an ecological balance. The first definition embodies the plan presented today. The end game is to keep future electricity produced by coal at 80% of the total mix, like today, even if it relies around technologies like carbon capture that are unproven on the scale of Prairie State. And so you can see box 2035 to 2038 on the Serpentine timeline for where you'll see that come in. The second definition reflects the direction some members of this community would like St. Charles to pursue. A focused effort on making renewable energy a growing portion of the electricity mix with firm milestones, aggressive targets, and accountability through transparency. And I think you'll notice in the sustainability plan, there's really no message or no mention of mix along the timeline. So what are our targets for renewables in 2025, 2030, 2035? With targets, you can measure progress, and there's really no defined way of how we're going to get there. The only way we can get to more sustainable energy is if this council votes no on extending the IMEA contract and begins the process to investigate and vet all options. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. John Glenn. I know most of you. It's a very interesting discussion, so I'm here to talk about the same topic. And I do notice that it's Earth Day today, so I subscribed to a satire email, and they said, successful Earth Day campaign delays inevitable global catastrophe by one day. Just a little bit of Earth Day humor. So I prepared some remarks, and they might be a little different than, I'm not going to focus so much on the content of this presentation that was made by Peter, I believe, which he did a good job. Most of it, I think, was solid information. There was a little bit of PR at the back. We're doing, we're great people and all that. We're doing this and that, and our building's great. But the focus is on the delivery of electricity to the city. Excuse me, I'm pulling glasses on so I can see better. So welcome to Earth Day 2024. The first was in 1970. This is the 54th. I've been a concerned environmentalist for years, decades actually. For example, back in 1988, to commemorate the 18th Earth Day, at that time it was still kind of a novelty. Now it's more just like any Earth Day, right? Time magazine published the Planet of the Year issue, this one. Some of you might have been alive to see this one. I don't know if all you were. But it's the Earth, it's a Christo, the famous artist Christo did this artwork. The Earth wrapped in plastic is tied together with string because it's falling apart. So that was the Planet of the Year issue to commemorate Earth Day in 1988. I read it, I was alarmed. I wrote a letter to the editor, and in the following week's issue, I was the top headline letter to the editor, whose profiles on the letters page. So I've been caring about this issue a long time. Which brings me to today's topic of the IMA. Many of you know me from my decades-long living in this community, or at least my service on the Housing Commission for several years. But here's my climate story. Before I became a realtor, I was in consumer research, and before that, as a Bachelor of Engineering. My first career position began in the electric power industry. As part of the GE Power family, I was a turbo generator commissioning engineer at an experimental nuclear power station. That was exactly 50 years ago in 1973-74, that I started working in that business. And though fundamentally turbo generators remain the same, you need some heat steam to drive the turbine, to generate the electricity. In generally, it's the same, but the technology was primitive by today's standards. We had no computers, dials are all mechanical. It was very primitive. Nuclear is starting to become in vogue again, as was already mentioned. And that's an interesting alternative that I think we should think about, or at least Prairie State. And those things have advanced a lot since then, so it's a problem. And fusion, right now, fusion is still a dream far off in the future, just like it was when I was studying at high school. It's getting closer, but it's nowhere near yet. So the point is, and though I'm no expert, I do get it, that we all need reliable and affordable power. So I'm glad to live in St. Charles, where we enjoy an excellent municipal facility, a utility rather, which is contracted for by a reliable and affordable source of electric power from IMEA, because we all do need power. The issue is how to keep the power coming in town while minimizing ecological downsides. And whether staying with our current source, IMEA, or not, will it make sense so far in the future? Will it continue to make sense so far into the future? So we already have a contract, and now 10 years away from it being needed, asking us to re-sign. So I get it, though, that the power industry has a very long-term planning process. You can't build a power station in 3 weeks. So it needs to outlast most political terms. So your politicians, in 10 years, 5, 10 years, 10, 20 years, you might not be in office, and probably most of you will not. And your decisions today and the next year will impact what happens then. So it's a very difficult choice you have to make. And the promises and hopes of the future technologies are always uncertain. So carbon capture, we don't know if it'll work very well. So the outcomes are not certain. Therefore, this decision task before you is very difficult. I think we all recognize that back there. So while IMEA seems to be pushing for an expedited contract decision, which we totally get that they feel they need to, the city should not be pushed into a premature contract extension. There are options beyond IMEA. We used to have ComEd, for example. And the key concern is to diversify away from coal, not keep building it forever, if possible. The city needs power, but it can be bought from the wider grid. It may not need to rely on so-called carbon capture, which remains a controversial idea, and technology is advancing fast in many areas. We don't know really what's out 10 years from now. So all this makes this decision hard, and we understand that. My goal is to convince the city to set up a committee to thoroughly and transparently evaluate this. It's encouraging that, to quote city staff in the document that was presented to you today, they will be providing presentations, facilitating discussion, answering questions, and preparing information for your consideration over the next year, which implies to me that they're not looking for a decision this month, next month, but maybe later in the year or next year in the spring. So I think I welcome all that information. Finally, I want to make you aware that last year, in case you're not aware, last year, Kane County organized a group of citizens, including myself. I think there are about 80 of us, maybe 100, from around the county, to develop the Kane County Climate Action Plan. I'm not aware that any St. Charles officials were involved. came to my notice while I was in sessions. And task force members such as myself have been urged by the county to bring this report to the attention of the community leaders, so that I'm doing that tonight, so that our cities can engage with the plan's recommendations. And through my involvement with the plan, I met Susan Russo back there, who is heading up Tri-Cities Clean Energy, and then through her, Debbie Mader, who's heading up the St. Charles Initiative. And we're all here for our help. Thank you again, and happy Earth Day.
Thank you, John. Any other comments? All right, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, sorry.
My name is Frank Bartos, and I'm a concerned citizen about our St. Charles's energy future. I had a not too long of a presentation prepared, but some of it was blown out of the water by the excellent presentation of Mr. Shore, who is works full-time in this area. It's just some of the numbers that concern me a little bit as to how much renewable power, renewable energy sources come into play here. So some of my presentation will be part read, part ad hoc. It is disturbing to me that along the timeline of IMEA, there is absolutely no further mention of renewable energy projects beyond 2035, which is the start of the new contract. And I know that there is no close relationship between the sustainability plan and the contract, but nevertheless, the time spans involved make it apparent that there should be something forecast for renewables during the time frame of the contract that you are asked to sign. I estimate roughly with what renewables will be in place, 130 megawatts are mentioned by 2025, 2026. There has been there exists currently about 120 megawatts, so we're talking about roughly 255 megawatts, give or take the addition of what the battery power addition might be, but I don't think we're talking huge amounts there. Compare this with, so I don't think that there is that there is nearly enough to achieve the 2050 net zero vision through renewables. In part because the remaining milestones in the timeline of IMEA, it refers only to coal power plants. This is where IMEA's energy generation future seems to rely on decarbonization to meet the legislated requirement of 45% reduction of CO2 emissions at Prairie State Power Plant. Certainly, carbon capture is beyond the scope of a brief discussion. However, it needs to be further discussed. There's certainly complexity, uncertainty, and attendant high cost in a major carbon capture project. And being so important, it's only it's very muted in the description of the sustainability plan, and referring to it that a third-party member likely will come up to take this up. But it's fair to ask, what if there is lack of funding, or what if the project is unsuccessful or results in less than an acceptable level of carbon capture? In that event, the legislated shutdown of a large part of Prairie State power plant would take place, leaving a big hole to be filled by another acceptable energy supply source. I think there needs to be further validation of carbon capture and an alternative solution specified in case there is a need of that. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you.
This will be very brief. Hi, I'm Hewlett Pruker. I just realized that this IMEA contract extension being considered will affect our children and grandchildren much more than it will affect our generation. I personally, in 30 years, will be 110 years old. I don't think I'm going to care where the electricity comes from. Just saying. And I look around here, and in 30 years, most of the people here are also going to be elderly. So we need to think about the children, the next generation. Our children and grandchildren will be left to suffer the consequences of electricity generated by coal, an archaic power source already. If we extend this contract, our children and grandchildren will have to grapple in 30 years with the same issue we're struggling with now. Why would we do that? Why would we do that? So it is imperative that St. Charles do three things. Hire an independent energy consultant to explain the financial implications of this contract. Secondly, investigate other electricity providers, learning what services they offer and what sources of power they use, and also put the contract out for competitive bids. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure.
Class. Anyone else? No?
Chair Bungard, I just wanted to say one thing, if I could.
Of course.
I just wanted to thank Public Works for all their work that led up to where the First Street Plaza is today. The fencing is now all gone. It looks beautiful. I took a walk around there today. Everything's budding, the trees, everything looks really, really good. So thank you very much for the time put into it and the consideration of getting that fencing removed as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Sorry, so do we have a motion?
Yeah, move to adjourn.
Moved by Paul, second by Bob. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.